Ladies and gentlemen, I have a little bit more complicated task, actually a double task, to summarize an initiative started in Budapest and its outcome, and also briefly I would like to refer what we are doing in the Hungarian Ombudsman system. 1 year on from Budapest, how this network can work together. So what is this network? 1 year ago, nearly 1 year ago, on the from 24th to 26th of April 2014, we held a conference in the Hungarian Parliament following a report of the UN Secretary General entitled Intergenerational Solidarity and the Needs of Future Generations. The Secretary General was invited by the Rio Plus 20 process to issue a report in relation to the current status of intergenerational solidarity, both on a global and as well as regional and national level. And actually, globally, the process was a claim from several NGOs to create a new institution, a UN High Commissioner or a UN Ombudsman for Future Generations, an initiative that did not meet with success. And in the lack of progress on a global level, the UN Secretary General highlighted that nevertheless there is a standstill on the global plane. There are national institutions that are worth to have a closer look and are worth to be copied in other nation states with a view to have intergenerational justice served. Actually, of course, the role of the different institutions that do exist on this field is to create some sort of an institutional protection for future generations, and actually to bring, in a certain way, future generations into the negotiation table, to create some sort of long-term thinking and some sort of mediative role in the society between the different stakeholders with the view to serve the interests of future generations. It is worth listing the institutions that we have on that field, and we are very lucky that today we have got several institutions represented here, so I only want to very briefly refer to the different sort of models that do exist, as these have been very nicely introduced and shown just previously. Of course, I don't want to take away the task for Mr. Peter Davis to introduce the role of the Commissioner for Sustainable Futures of Wales. We are celebrating the Act tomorrow. One thing that I would like to underline that the Commissioner for Sustainable Futures was excellent in trying to develop partnerships among the different stakeholders in the society, from civil society, from government, from business, trying to shape some common understanding and common points, and that is one of the reasons why the institution has become so widely respected in Wales. We have to say a few words about an institution who wanted to be present here but finally couldn't come. That's the Ombudsman for Children Norway. I'm actually listing, just to refer correctly, I'm listing those model institutions which were mentioned by the US Secretary General's report. They are altogether 8 minus 1 because 1 was abolished, unfortunately, in the meanwhile. But there were 8 model institutions referred, and they are representing so different models that it's really interesting, or it is really worth to highlight with one or few words how differently they can work for the same great purpose. So the Ombudsman for Children of Norway was rather surprised, as he described, when he realized that the UN Secretary General has highlighted his role in safeguarding the interests of future generations via acting as Ombudsman for Children. And actually, the UN Secretary General's report has initiated a very significant work within the Ombudsman's office, within the office of the Norwegian Child Ombudsman, trying to detect what the Child Ombudsman could do for future generations. Of course, we realized that with the New York Convention on the Rights of Children, there is a lot of development globally. Our grandparents' generations could easily put some slaps on the face of their children, on the faces of our parents. Our parents could still shout a lot with us, but in the most developed part of the world, now the children are calling the police when they are faced with parents like this. At the same time, a tacit thing has happened that there was a trade-off of the resources of future generations. So not the procedural rights are, on the one hand, are going well to some extent, or we could say they are going better, but in a substantive way, current generations are betraying the interest of our children and potential grandchildren. And that is a responsibility that the Norwegian Child Ombudsman is now feeling, and decided that it's going to do special programs in order to raise awareness for the environment in children, and also to create programs with which they can make the society accountable for the losses which are caused by these unfair trades for all financial benefits. We are trading resources of future generations. We have had a wonderful lecture about how the Environment and Sustainable Development Commissioner is working in Canada. I just want to take note that they are also part of the eight model institutions. We cannot enough highlight the tragic story of the Commissioner for Future Generations of Israel. He was a parliamentary commissioner elected to protect the interests of future generations. He had a very broad mandate. He had the chance to invest. He was appointed by the Speaker of the Knesset, the Speaker of the Parliament of Israel, and he could withhold any laws, any bills, until he was investigating its potential impact on future generations. And it created some sort of a pocket veto that any bills could have been vetoed by him just by not allowing for further negotiation in the parliament under the legal rubric that he is still investigating. Now that was something too much for Israeli politics, and I suppose it would be something too much for other parliaments as well. So we may have to look for different solutions. Maybe a good solution that the parliamentarians themselves are digging into the science of the future, like what is happening in Finland. I particularly like this model, actually. Paula has been speaking a few words about it, but let me highlight that the fact that parliamentarians are coming together twice a week without any obligation to discuss any statute or any piece of legislation, just to think of future of their own country, I think it's a wonderful way to make parliamentarians feeling involved with what's happening on the long run. And I think it's an excellent way to influence decision makers by allowing time for themselves to say. The Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment in New Zealand is also having a very interesting task. We could say that he's having a more traditional environmental commissioner sort of task. But there is something I would like to highlight, and which gives a reference to all of the institutions. And when I started to work in my own position, I was starting to think, who am I to say anything in the name of future generations? And I think our closest ally is always science. Because if we can have established limits for the politics which are grounded in scientific research, and potentially the different academies of sciences are excellent partners, such as they are good partners in Hungary for the Ombudsman's office. They can be excellent allies in trying to create long-term veto zones or no-fly zones for politics on the ground that certain solutions would be against the long-term ecological interest of a given country, long-term sustainable development interest of a country. Basically, these are hard science outcomes, not outcomes of the social sciences, but hard science outcomes related to biology, related to the potential outcome of the management of natural resources and so forth. The Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment in New Zealand is using that task by trying to create boundaries for the politics and for politicians. The Parliamentary Advisory Council example in Germany is wonderful in showing that in such a democracy like Germany, an institution which is now a modern institution recommended by the United Nations Secretary General can be, time to time, shaken by actual moves of the politics. And I think this creates an especially strong motivation for all of the other institutions to try to stick together, to liaise with each other, to create a network under the umbrella of the United Nations, making it sure that we can demonstrate to our politicians and leaders that whatever we are doing is not a unique, absurd model, just created by random at a certain special situation, but different models recognized by the UN Secretary General do exist. And finally, the Ombudsman for Future Generations in Hungary, we were shaken by history, despite of the fact that the history of our institution is not that long. Both commissioners, both ombudsmen are present here. Dr. Sándor Fülöp, my good friend, is also here, who is my predecessor. When the office came to life, it was an independent ombudsman elected by the parliament. And then the idea came that the system should be changed and the Ombudsman for Future Generations should be placed under the General Ombudsman as one of his two deputies. So a new system was created and I'm absolutely sure that those who proposed the change were not proposing it with full of goodwill vis-à-vis future generations. I think all sort of indications were raised, but it was not necessarily to strengthen the institution, but nevertheless the outcome is a fortunate one, what I feel. The Ombudsman for Future Generation, my office, is elected by the Parliament with a two-thirds majority. The Ombudsman for Future Generations is proposed to the Parliament. The person is proposed to the Parliament by the General Ombudsman. In Hungary, the tradition is that there are always academics who are fulfilling the position of Ombudsman. They are always coming from the academic life. Sometimes turned out the professors who look interesting on the cathedra. They seem to be mad when they are in the office of the Ombudsman, but it even gives some charm to the institution. Now my mandate is very much related to our new constitution, in which there is a new concept, a new legal concept, the common heritage of nation. My main task is to protect the common heritage of the nation for future generations. What is the common heritage of the nation? It is its terrestrial and subterranean waters, it is their forest, the soil, the biological diversity, and its culture. So this is to be safeguarded for the benefit of future generations. There is also a statement in the new constitution saying that the nation is the alliance of previous, present, and future Hungarians, meaning that at all decisions, not only the current but the future generations have to be taken into consideration. And the way how the General Ombudsman and the Ombudsman for Future Generations are working together is that we have a different sphere in which we do act. I have to cry out to the society constitutionally when I see that the interests of future generations are trespassed. Which means that I cry out in case of bad environmental policies, which are not a constitutional matter, but which are creating damage for future generations. When the damage is so great that it is leading to a current trespass of constitutional rights basically related to a healthy environment, then I turn to the General Ombudsman and we do issue a joint recommendation what the authorities should do. In my own capacity, I am also the environmental law deputy of the General Ombudsman. So all complaints, as I realized, related to the degradation of environment are involving the current generation and the future generations as well, with the exception of noise complaints, which are related to current generations only. But I'm also dealing with these cases under my other hat as Deputy Deputy General Ombudsman. I also deal with petitions, which might be regarded as strange, because of course future generations do not knock on my door. But if there is a general complaint related to the environment, then I'm dealing with all environmental related complaints under my hat as Deputy for Environment of the General Ombudsman, and I always bring the future generations aspect into the investigation. We issue the reports jointly with the Ombudsman. Whenever I see any other trespass of the interest of future generations, I am entitled to independently issue statements warning the authorities, the public, that the interests of future generations are betrayed. Currently, just today, actually, there was a bill adopted curtailing the rights of national parks. Already in last year, December, I issued a statement saying that should the Parliament adopt that bill, we have the suspicion that it's anti-constitutional. Now, they adopted it, they didn't care. And the next step is that I'm proposing, I will propose to the General Ombudsman that the case should be taken to the Constitutional Court, most likely. We will have to do a full detailed investigation whether it had been or has been changed. I cannot forecast officially the investigation, but I don't see too many changes, which means that there is a good chance that that I will recommend to the General Ombudsman to take the case to the Constitutional Court. So our atomic weapon is taking the case to the Constitutional Court. Currently, according to the current statute, the Ombudsman for Future Generations cannot take the case directly to the Constitutional Court. It has to propose it to the General Ombudsman, and the General Ombudsman has to issue a statement putting all of the reasons if he is rejecting or she is rejecting or proposition to take the case to the Constitutional Court. Well, now, feeling how the structure is working, has been working in the last decade, I don't forecast any situation where the Ombudsman is taking the chance of turning down a proposal that a case to be taken to the Constitutional Court, because he has to issue it he has to highlight it, the motives in his annual report. So I suppose he is rather discouraged to take that step. So all in all, we have got these 8 institutions representing very different missions. What we would like to do, what we see is that the politics can shake our missions very easily. We also see that global processes are happening in which we can create some sort of a mediative role in bringing ideas discussed on an international level to a domestic level. The big problem, the big difficulty with very far-seeing ideas at the level of the United Nations, that there is no public space on a global level. And these national institutions devoted to long-termism can bring matters relevant on a global level, but also hitting our own countries to be touched upon by the domestic public discourse via our offices. So in this regard, and with this I would like to conclude, I think we can not only contribute to the preservation of the interest of future generations domestically, but hopefully we can contribute to the preservation of the earth as well. Thank you very much for your attention.